Hi, Sizwe. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello, welcome. We'll give a few minutes for people to join. And feel free to throw in the chat where you're joining us from, the land you're on, and which organization as well, if you'd like. Also test the chat room if it's available for everyone. And I sent in the email yesterday, I think, the package with the annexes for the note on the language and abbreviations that we might be using today, just in case. So please have it handy. Awesome. Let's start by expressing solidarity with the Indigenous rights to sovereignty, land, and livelihood as organizations working in Canada with people who have been forcibly displaced. We recognize our responsibilities to address ongoing colonial injustice against First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We respect and thank Indigenous peoples for their care and stewardship of the land, air, and water we all rely on. The connection between our work and Indigenous sovereignty are complex. We are in a complicated position of creating safe refuge on a land that is stolen. We are committed to a long term of self-education, of listening and learning from Indigenous perspectives, and of building respectful relationships with Two Spirits and Indigenous organizations as we move towards decolonizing our practices. And with that, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations people. And I invite you to share in the chat the name of the land you're joining us from. My name is Adam Kusa. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the National Projects Manager at Rainbow Refugee Society. I'm a proud gay refugee from Lebanon and a settler on this land since 2016. I'm a foodie and a world traveler, among other things, and I'm so happy to be hosting this webinar today to talk about the challenges that LGBTQI refugees face once they are settled in Canada. This webinar is organized by the Rainbow Coalition for Refuge, soon to be called From Borders to Belonging, as we are rebranding with a new name and a new logo. We will have a website with helpful resources to support LGBTQI refugees. We are a coalition of Canadian organizations who champion LGBTQI refugee protection and settlement. As I said, we're going to talk today about the challenges that LGBTQI refugees face during their settlement in Canada. We will hear from the expertise of our speakers for today. Please join me in welcoming Dave Kerr, the Director of LGBTQI Refugees Programs at MCC Toronto. Hello, Dave. Nahid Kiremati, the Manager and Rainbow Wrap Coordinator LGBTQ plus program at the Center for Newcomers and the End of the Rainbow Foundations. Hello, Nahid. And Nazanin Mukaddami. She's a Time to Thrive program manager at Rainbow Refugee Society. Welcome, folks. And Dave, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Let me just quickly say a very big thank you to Rainbow Coalition for Refuge for organizing this webinar, and also to create a space where individuals like myself can come and learn, and also to share on different issues that touch and concern refugees, and particularly refugees who we support within the LGBTQ plus community. So as you heard, my name is Dave Carr. My pronouns are he, him, and I am with the Metropolitan Community Church of Toronto. I do have the humbling opportunity of serving as its director for its LGBTQ plus programs. And also, I'm a proud graduate of the University of London, where I pursued my law degree, and just being very inquisitive, I would say, learning is something that I continue to do. And so when I came to Canada as an immigrant and having gone through the refugee process and all of that, I really became intrigued with the Canadian immigration system, and then became a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, now having the awesome opportunity of helping people to find other pathways to come to Canada and to support refugees in particular. Also, my professional experience, my background lends itself to my having worked in an immigration law firm. I've worked in banking, and I've also been in the financial industry, working in insurance as well. But one of the things that I'm most proud about is my lived experience as a member of the community. And I do believe that that qualifies me in many ways to be a part of this conversation. Lived experience in terms of being a gay man from Jamaica who came here as a refugee myself. So I understand some of the inherent issues that refugees are facing and continue to face. I just want to acknowledge that I will be approaching this topic from a perspective of being on a journey, and I've always said this before, I am on a journey to learn. I acknowledge that there are many experts in this meeting today who could probably share much more than I will be able to share on the topic. But I'm on a journey to learn, and even as I learn, I want to impart my knowledge so that we can really, work together and change systems as much as we can. So the topic, as I understand it today, we will be looking on the topic of LGBTQ plus refugee resettlement. That's the perspective I'm going to be looking on. And I'm going to be looking on some of the challenges, talking about some of the strategies and also the recommendations that we could possibly put in place so that we can support our people. Now, a little bit about my organization, MCC Toronto, that's the Metropolitan Community Church of Toronto. For persons who may not be aware of us, we've been around for almost 50 years. MCC Toronto is a faith-based organization that really does a lot of work in terms of shaping the Canadian value of inclusion, diversity, and equality. So at MCC Toronto, we like to talk about, all is welcome, and really every single person is welcome, regardless of whether you're Christian, you identify as a Jew, a Muslim, or even if you don't identify, you're welcome. We operate a human rights center that works to address social justice issues which touch and concern the community. And we are home to the Triangle program. That's Canada's first LGBTQ plus high school. MCC Toronto, we are proud of many of our involvement in terms of social justice and shaping the landscape of things for the community. And one of the things that we're particularly proud about is our leadership role in the fight for same-sex marriage, adoption, and so on. And we were the site to the first legalize the same gender marriage in 2021. So that's something that we continue to be very proud about, and we are very hopeful that we will have other awesome opportunities to pioneer initiatives of this sort. Because of the growing refugee crisis across the world, of course, MCC Toronto, we got involved and we launched what is dubbed as our signature LGBTQ plus refugee programs, where basically in 2007, we have created programs wherein we're able to support persons who are here in Canada and they are trying to navigate the Canadian landscape so that they can settle, they can find information on healthcare, on banking, and so on. And we really position ourselves to support, and we've been able to reach at least 800 persons per year. And we continue to do the work that we can in supporting individuals here. Now, also MCC Toronto in 2013, just back Adam, 2013, we became a sponsorship agreement holder with the government of Canada, basically assisting to resettle persons. So persons who are displaced, members of the community, they are already outside of their community and they're trying to find a safer place like Canada to live. We help through what is referred to as private sponsorship of refugee. We've been able to submit 70 plus applications since the commencement of our relationship with the government, and we continue to look for opportunities in order to do more. All right, so let's just turn our focus to some of the challenges that we've identified in terms of what our members have reported, what we are seeing on the ground for persons who have been resettled. So as you can see here, there's the issue of a limited support network. Housing remains a challenge, financial instability, there is language barrier. And these are some of the, the ongoing challenges that our resettled refugees will face or are likely to face when they come to Canada. And I'm speaking specifically also from the perspective of Toronto, where I'm based. So on the issue of limited support network, we acknowledge that in many instances, these individuals having been displaced, they have been forced to leave their country where they have a certain support of their family, their friends, and they come to a country like Canada where perhaps they don't have, the luxury of having friends and family here. Thankfully, based on the model that we've been able to develop or work with, we have been working with the settlement teams made up of at least 5 individuals who are committed to the cause of providing support to individuals for at least a year as they journey into a new system. So even though we acknowledge that, yes, there is that system in place, and then there is the obligation for support for a year, that non-financial support, we know that there's nothing like, the refugee having their own family, their friends, and their own network that they can rely on. So of course, this becomes a challenge. And then there's the issue of isolation and other ripple effects. Housing, it continues to be a sore point here in Toronto, especially. We're seeing that in terms of the cost for housing, An apartment, a one-bedroom apartment is going on average for $1,800. And again, because of the limited resources, we see how, that will cause major challenge for individuals, even as they navigate and try and find housing. There is also the added layer of language barrier, lack of knowledge in terms of the Canadian rental market. And of course, individuals, because they're coming here as newcomers, they may not have, they don't have the credit history. So that also poses a problem in many instances. For financial instability, of course, in terms of working with MCC Toronto, a minimum requirement to support one individual, it's $18,250, of which $250 is usually for administrative costs. So technically what we're saying is $18,000 would be that minimum that would be used to support the individual over a 12-month period, which is, part in keeping with our obligation. So technically, we're talking about $1,500 that would be given to a sponsored individual on arrival. So again, you can see the dynamics working between the expenses and the limited resources of $1,500 and how that plays into amplifying the challenges that they will face. Language barrier, we spoke about that already, and we know how miscommunication can really hamper individuals from accessing certain services and so on. Okay, so let's move on to the other challenges that we've identified. We also talk about the issue of discrimination and prejudice, even within the LGBTQ+ community, and how also isolation plays into part of the challenge. We spoke about that, and loneliness, and how that may also lead into depression and other mental health challenges, contributing to individuals, the trauma that they would even be fleeing from coming here to Canada, and being able to, navigate the Canadian space. So, the challenges are ongoing. It's important for us to, even as we speak about the challenges, that we also talk about how it is that we can strategize on making sure that we have systems in place that will support refugees even as they face these barriers and these obstacles on their journey. Adam? All right, so in talking about the strategies, so in terms of strategy, next slide, Adam. So in terms of the strategies, we wanted to just emphasize the need for settlement support. It's very important that within our organizations, we create opportunities for settlement support of our refugees, even as they arrive here in Canada. So it helps them to navigate the Canadian immigration system, for example, and also to connect them to essential services depending on their unique needs. We're able to connect, for healthcare, for education, for employment, and so on. So, there's an emphasis of just making sure that there is a system in place within your organization to provide additional settlement support to individuals. Housing assistance, of course, it can help to access safe and affordable housing, including assistance with rental application and advocating on behalf of, these individuals who very often will not know what their rights are. And so, by just lending a helping hand, we'll be able to provide them or steer them towards safe, access to safe and affordable housing. Mental health counseling, one of the things that we have recently done is that we have partnered with some organizations that are providing mental health support. And so as a mandatory process, once the individual arrive here in Canada, we try to, just make sure that they are set up for success, and also built into the settlement plan, the issue of mental health support where needed. That is also covered in the settlement plan. Peer support, connecting refugees with other individuals like themselves, members of the community, creating a supportive community that understands, of course, the unique challenges and the experiences that you're going through. And then finally here, in terms of strategy, advocacy and legal support, right? This is very important. And I also just want to pause here to say that I know, many of our organizations, including MCC Toronto, we've been doing a lot of work in terms of helping people around their immigration needs from a legal perspective, but also there is a greater need for us to do more in terms of just also creating spaces for us to explore other areas of the law and other access to justice, where individuals can learn more about, in the Canadian context, what does the criminal law say about this? What does family law say about that? What does human rights look like? Which very often, individuals may be coming from countries where human rights are not respected, and that there are, many human rights atrocities and all of that across, different countries and so on. And so, it's an opportunity for us to do more, and also to let individuals be aware of the different laws here in Canada. Now, to my final point in terms of recommendations, right? So move along, Adam. So in terms of our recommendation, it is important for us as organizations to be very intentional in terms of building collaborative relationships, right? Among stakeholders. So by stakeholders, I'm referencing, government agencies, community-based organizations, and just individuals generally who are desirous of supporting the efforts of making sure that members of our community remain safe, that they're catered to, and so on. So it's a collaborative effort. We acknowledge here at MCC Toronto that the work cannot be done. We cannot do all the work on our own. And so we rely on our stakeholders and our partners to really get the work done, to assist us in getting the work done. It's very important for us also to, even as we lobby, government and private sector and stuff, that we also talk about the need for increased funding. Increased funding in terms of, for example, I can use it as an example, the RAP rate, here in Ontario when compared to, the expenses that the refugee is likely to face in terms of accessing homes. So for example, the rate needs to be increased, right? And this is an area that we could lobby the government and other stakeholders, to increase and all of that. It's important for us to also encourage culturally competent services, and also have, like I said, access to legal services as we go along there. Discrimination, housing discrimination is something that we see, that continues to happen, where individuals are, discriminated for one reason or another. It's important in those instances that we really get involved. We do advocacy work. We empower individuals, let them know what is right and what's not. And if they feel a sense that they are, in any way being discriminated, then they know appropriate steps that they can take in order to, protect themselves and their rights and all of that. Engage with the local communities, expand the support services. It's important for us to also do data collection, because data collection is what is going to help us in terms of, understanding qualitatively and quantitatively what is happening on the ground and being very informed so that we can change systems and all of that. And then finally, employment support is something that we recommend as well. So providing employment support and opportunities can really help individuals as they strive towards being self-sufficient and also building a new life here in Canada. So these are some of the challenges that we have identified, some of the strategies in terms of how we can go about navigating systems, and then the recommendations as we have put forward. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Dave. Very helpful. Thanks for bringing the perspective of NCC Toronto and your years of experience and your journey. We will move to Calgary with Nahid. Hey, thanks for joining us. Please introduce yourself and let us know what are the challenges that LGBTQI refugees are experiencing in Calgary.
Sure. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Dave. My name is Nahid. I'm the manager, well, she/her. I'm the manager and the Rainbow Wrap coordinator at the LGBTQ+ program at Center for Newcomers. Our program also works very closely with the End of the Rainbow Foundation, where I'm one of the main volunteers at. I also belong to the LGBTQ community myself. I'm an immigrant, a lesbian from Iran. And for the past 12 years, I've been involved in serving immigrants in different positions. But specifically for the past 4 years, I've been very lucky to work with the LGBTQ+ refugees and immigrants through these two organizations. I also run a social support group called True Colors, which is under the umbrella of the End of the Rainbow Foundation. And at True Colors, we bring LGBTQ+ newcomers together on a monthly basis, focusing on improving their social life. We have a variety of different activities, such as meetups, field trips, holiday celebrations, free tickets to different performances, and so much more. Next, please. Thank you. I already covered my background. A little bit about CFN is that the Center for Newcomer Society of Calgary adopted the current name in 2005. CFN was initially incorporated as a society and registered as a charity in 1988 as Calgary's Mennonite Center for Newcomers, molded after the Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers, which initially started in 1980. CFN is a huge company. We are around 300 people here, so I'm not going to go through every services that we offer here, but I will mainly focus on my program, which is the LGBTQ+ program. As one of the largest reception centers for LGBTQ+ immigrants and refugees in Alberta, we are very proud to offer support regardless of the immigrant statuses, whether if they are IRCC eligible or ineligible clients, if they are PR or convention refugee or on some sort of expired visa. We always are welcoming everyone. We provide support, referrals, and resources to everyone. We have settlement services such as housing, assisting, and improving English skills. We have collecting donations. We have our donation center with clothing and furniture. We help with fair entry letters, government applications, financial support, applying for SIN number, even PR. And once in a while, we also have fundings to provide the clients with grants and loans, helping prevent homelessness in Calgary. We also do have host homes, people who volunteer and are hosting our newcomers and refugees, whether if they're LGBTQ+, Afghan refugees, or Ukrainian newcomers. We have our mental health department, which have counselors who belong to the community. And we are one of the sponsor agreement holders, SAH. So We sponsor 25 refugees every year. Our program specifically works with 4 categories: LGBTQ+ refugees, unaccompanied minors, human rights defenders, and women at risk. We complete all the administrative steps for them, do all the connections with IRCC, and for the financial piece of the sponsorship, it comes whether from our donations and our funding at CFN, or the applicant's family or friends if they know anyone here. And we do have fundraising events that we try to put together the money so we can help these 25 individuals. We have a refugee assistance program which supports refugee claimants to work on their refugee portals, providing them with guidance how to put together their evidence, and we help them also to be connected to a legal representative for the next step. And legal referrals, we do advocate for the client to get accepted with either Calgary Legal Guidance or Alberta Legal Aid. And we, on top of that, once in a while get lawyers who do offer pro bono services to our clients, which is amazing. We have employment services, peer support, and mentorship, and community connection through different activities, events, and partnering organizations. Now, end of the Rainbow Foundation. As I mentioned, CFN LGBTQ+ program and the End of the Rainbow Foundation work very closely, focusing on the same goal: improving the lives of the LGBTQ+ immigrants and refugees in Calgary. In addition to that, End of the Rainbow is Calgary's Rainbow Railroad Station, which assists LGBTQ+ refugees to settle in Calgary after they have been assisted by either Rainbow Railroad, UNHCR, or the Canadian government fleeing their unsafe countries. We help create sponsorship groups, provide safe shelters, and all other settlement services. That's where one of my roles actually come in, Rainbow Rap Coordinator, which means that myself with my team, we create an intense settlement plan, and we are one-on-one involved with these refugees. We help them complete every step, let's say opening your bank account and finding a house. We start from 0 to 100 until 1 year is over. Obviously, if they need us for more than that, we are here. But financially speaking, our program and the government, we put together a sufficient income for 12 months, and we help these refugees to settle in Calgary. We advocate for them when it's needed, and we have support services such as peer support and support with refugees hearing. We have social support groups such as Trans Journey, True Colors, which I already mentioned, Positive Space, Creating Connections, and many more. We also have all year round tax clinics, and we provide clients with volunteer opportunities. We match them also with volunteers for saddle tier, which could be always additional support and helpful. Next, please. Thank you. Now, working closely with the LGBTQ immigrants, we have witnessed different challenges and barriers that they have to go through. For example, expectation versus reality. We see some LGBTQ plus immigrants struggle with adjusting in their new home, depending on whether if they've done some research on what to expect, on what is available for them, and other factors. For example, some newcomers have the idea of coming to Canada mean finding a job super easily, finding free English classes for everyone, financial support, and higher quality of life as soon as they enter the country. But they experience a different reality, which could affect their mental health and make it harder for them to settle. Another reality is that not everyone is LGBTQ plus friendly in Canada, and not everywhere is safe and welcoming place for LGBTQ plus folks. So they have different expectations and dreams, which I hope one day they all come true and we can say Canada is 100% safe for LGBTQ folks, but that is not unfortunately true, and that could be experienced as a shock for the newcomers. Familiarity and coming out. In many cases, the immigrant is not familiar with proper or acceptable terms for their own sexual orientation or in general. So they feel self-conscious about joining different meetups and events within the community. And on top of that, there are immigrants who are still closeted and are very uncomfortable sharing their secret with anyone other than, let's say, one or two practitioners in the agency, which makes it harder for them to seek any type of support and connection. They keep carrying the fear of rejection and judgment and discrimination with themselves here as well. Another challenge would be marginalization and discrimination, which applies to almost every newcomer, but specifically to the LGBTQ immigrants. Some folks who are, let's say, visibly queer face more marginalization and feel discriminated in their own cultural groups, in their faith groups, neighborhood, workplace, school, and that can make it so much harder for them to feel happy and safe here. Isolation and mental health issues. In some cases, when the immigrant from a new country, from a country where the community is important and nightlife is big and it exists, are relocated to smaller cities and towns, they experience difficulties adjusting to the individualism culture here. The personal spaces that we value make it so much harder for them to connect. It takes a while for them to realize what is right and what is wrong in terms of connecting and communicating with others, which again adds to their isolation. Available services. Depending on their immigration status, there are limitations on what each group can access in terms of community resources and government support. For example, a large portion of my work is with refugee claimants, or we will call them IRCC ineligible people, and they cannot access free classes for English improvement or obtain a job because they have to wait for their work permit to arrive, which in some cases can take over 6 months. And not having work permit and SIN number make them ineligible for financial support and employment. And not having credits and references also makes it so much more difficult for them, for refugee claimants, to even find the proper housing. So they often end up in shelters before we can find a host home for them. Next, please. Thank you. Practical approaches and support that we have been implementing and we've been seeing positive results. It could be education and direction. To help make the settlement process smoother for our clients, we provide them with workshops such as orientation to living in Canada, workplace and classroom culture, banking, budgeting, and all other necessary life skills. We also have LGBTQ+ tailored workshops, such as the coming out in cultural context and SOGI. They are helpful. We see the effect on the clients after joining these workshops. The next would be community connection, connecting our clients to other settled immigrants or different community centers and partnering agencies have been positive on their overall well-being. Through connecting them more, there are more people who can check on them regularly and help them with the issues that the immigrant might not reach out to solve for. This can bring the sense of community that they miss and crave as well, so it improves their overall well-being. Safe environment. We work on creating a safe environment by enhancing our organizational system to ensure the most effective practices when working with LGBTQ+ clients, increasing the staff's knowledge in LGBTQ struggles and strengths, and keeping them up to date with the topic. also showing acceptance and inclusiveness while serving the LGBTQ plus clients and creating and building the trust that they need. And also putting aside our personal biases and opinions while serving them. Advocacy. We step up for our vulnerable clients when they need us. For example, remember I mentioned that refugee claimants are not eligible to apply for Alberta Works Income Support because they don't have a work permit and therefore they don't have a SIN number. But I'm proud to say in many cases, many of my refugee claimants are receiving financial support because we advocated for them. We contacted Alberta Works, we found a bank that can open an account without a SIN number, and we have helped them to become eligible just by using advocacy. So advocating for our clients is really important. And again, volunteers. We have easier process for our own clients to get involved at the center as volunteers because we have a background check and a lot more to accept volunteers at the center. But we try to help our clients to get involved in, let's say, if there is a small gathering at the agency or there are tasks that doesn't need background check, we try to help our immigrants who cannot access background check to volunteer. This can help their resume, help them learn about work culture in Canada. And again, we connect them with other volunteers who can help them with driving them to their important appointments, or if they're moving, or one-on-one help with applying for jobs, meetups, and all sort of other supports that volunteers can offer. I think I filled my 15 minutes. Thank you. That's all. And I would like to invite Nazanin for the next session.
Thank you, Nahid. Let us take 5 minutes break so we can stretch, have water, and come back. It's 10:15 on the West Coast, so 10:20 West Pacific time, 11:20 MST, and I think it's 1:20 Dave in Toronto, 2:20 in Halifax, and plus 30 minutes in Newfoundland. See you in a bit. Take care.
Thank you. Oh, if you can't hear anything, it's because we're on a break. I just messaged privately, Anna.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. And Nahid, thanks for your insight, and the expertise that you're bringing to us today. Also, there is room for questions after Nazanin finishes her part. Yes, so tomorrow you will be you'll be receiving the slides and the recording of this webinar as well. If you'd like to share it with your colleagues or other people who might be interested in the subject. Also, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our website soon as a resource hub to support LGBTQI newcomers. Nazanin.
So hi, everyone. Very good to share this time with you. My name is Nazanin Bardami, and I'm a Kurdish Iranian settler here. I came here as an international student. I'm a queer person living in, well, this is my home in Burnaby, which is the lands of Muslim, Spanish, Tsleil-Waututh people, and the Coquitlam people. I have been with Rainbow Refugee for the past 3 years since the pandemic started as staff. Before I was a board member. I also work as a clinical counselor here in Vancouver. Most of my work is supporting Black, Indigenous, Muslim, people of color, and navigating dynamics that brings up. I work from an anti-colonial, social justice-oriented lens. And I've been fortunate to be part of the Rainbow Refugee community in the past years, working along and supporting LGBTQI and HIV+ refugee claimants and resettled refugees. So I will be kind of like piggybacking on some of the conversations that Nahid and Dave brought. There's lots of shared struggles in terms of housing, unaffordability and insecurity, income insecurity, administrative challenges and things like that. And then I will be adding some as well. And Rainbow Refugee is an organization that provides support for, again, LGBTQI refugees and forcibly displaced individuals and those who are HIV positive. We've been operating for the past 20 years. And my program, Time to Thrive, is a bit of a newer program. We've had 2 strong arms, one the private sponsorship arm and one legal navigation support for inland claimants. What I think Nahid and Dave were talking about in terms of navigating the legal process here, connecting with legal aid or the provincial legal support, and Time to Thrive came as a psychosocial support for all refugees who are accessing our services. So we do provide financial aid, some housing advocacy support. We don't have a housing program. We just hired our first clinical counselor, so we are providing mental health and also social events, and we are co-creating communities of belonging. We come from a co-creating an empowerment model, so we actively create programs and events with people that are accessing support through Rainbow Refugee, and we're sharing space with them. Thank you. Next slide. This was a little bit about us and about me. So the background that I want to ground our conversation is 2 things. So intersectionality and system design. So we are working at the intersections of a very niche intersection in terms of gender identity, expression, sexuality, and sex characteristics. Adam is going to share a link in the chat around these terms. So if you're familiar with these terms, I think a lot of you might be. I think it would be a good review to take a look at that link. And if you're not familiar with the terminology, especially around LGBT community and queer community and the trans and non-binary community, I highly recommend taking a look at this PDF. It was developed by a local queer center that they do a lot of provincial education. And we're not going into terminology. Terminology is important. And at the same time, because especially within the queer community, words change, labels change, terminologies change quite often, and so many times that we are not going to talking about this. It's important to know, but also it's important to respect self-determination. So always asking the person how they want to be referred to and whatever label they use for them means to them only if it's appropriate to the conversation, so not out of personal curiosity. So intersection of gender identity, expression, sexuality, and sex characteristics, and immigration status. So as Dave and Nahid said, and as some of you who work in settlement might know, depending on the pathway that the person is here, they might qualify for things or not. So having a refugee status, having experienced forcibly displacement, forceful displacement, that creates an identity that is different from someone who might have come as an immigrant or a skilled worker or investment pathway, or someone who was born here. And also administrative privileges. And that's kind of what I mean by that is when your status, your immigration status gives you some privileges or takes away some of the privileges. So for example, opening a bank account, having a legal ID. So in BC, unless you have your IMM 144 the refugee claimant ID document, you cannot have a government issued ID, and that creates myriad of problems and challenges for people, especially when they're accessing social spaces or they want to open a bank account or anywhere that requires your ID. What insurance you qualify for, if it's IFHB or if it's provincial or none at all, if you're undocumented. So there is the intersection of administrative privileges that has nothing to do with you as a person. You're not born with it, but in terms of how you navigate the world, that creates quite a lot of dynamics of how you interact with the people around you and the system and what kind of place you see yourself at. And system design. So again, we want to ground our work in intersectionality and system design. And the system is designed to create inequality. So again, we recognize colonization to create inequalities based on gender, race, sexuality, and birthplace. So even within the refugee population, even within people who have had to migrate for many reasons, where they're coming from, where they were born, not even where they were living before, where they were born, make a difference in their process. The nationality of the person, the official nationality makes a difference. And these are the dynamics that it creates, and we want to really center that or ground our work in that. And also barriers. So some of the barriers Dave and Nahid talked about, and we're just going to build on some of those, as it's important for us as we're supporting or we're interacting LGBTQ refugees and newcomers. These are the things that would be informing our practice in whatever way that we're interacting with those, whether it's in mental health or medical care setting or legal support or settlement or housing or financial assistance. These would be, I think, important for us to keep in mind. Thank you. Next slide. So how to respond and remedy. So there are challenges that you are aware of. You might be getting some also localized information that is very much specific to your community or your province or to your city, or just like the group of people who are accessing your services. So how can we go about these things? We are well-intentioned. I'm assuming that we are also wanting to do good. We are joining in this webinar and doing the kind of work we are because we believe in the power of what we're doing and the community work. So education and training, webinars like this, if you are not very familiar or confident in your skills responding to queer and trans folks, it's very important to get some training so that you're familiar. A lot of the times, and I'm saying this for all the education and training, when we're not familiar or we are afraid of making mistakes, because again, we care and we don't want to make mistakes or hurt someone or offend someone, over time, we actually create a wall between us because of our fear, because of our anxiety, we stop interacting with people in a meaningful way. And that creates a barrier. So whether in any ways that we perceive the person as different than us, from sexual orientation and gender identity to physical or invisible disabilities, to migration pathways, to race, anything that we perceive, or social class as different, we might actually disconnect from them. So it's very important, if you are noticing something like that, to get training. We are fortunate that there are many trainings are available right now. I think when I started my work in mental health for about like 15 years ago, there weren't a lot of resources available. There were some, they were very community-based, they were really small. Education material wasn't as available. So migration and BIMPOC training. So we may have lots of training and confidence in responding to queer and LGBTQI plus communities, but we might not know a lot about migration pathways, those administrative privileges that each pathway has. So like a privately sponsored person who might come to the airport and there's a welcoming community waiting for them, they might have a very different experience than someone who just spent all their money and they made it to the airport and they submit a claim at the airport. They have a very different experience. And BIMPOC training, so Black, Indigenous, Muslim, person of color. So it's also important to be familiar with what are some of the specifics that each community is, some of the unique experiences that each community is going through. So my experience as an Iranian immigrant, it might be very different than someone who is wearing a visible hijab, who is also from Iran. My experience also as a queer immigrant might be very different than a Black person who's here. How people are treating us can be also very different. And we need to know about these nuances so that we can make space for people and we can also create safety. So until we can recognize how we are different and how justice and injustice lands on the person, we cannot be able to provide them with the safety and the accessibility and the availability that we believe that we are providing. Cultural safety and humility. Cultural safety came from the work of Indigenous nurses in New Zealand. And I think that would be a very good training for folks to have if you are working with anyone who's not sharing your culture, whatever culture that is. And humility, cultural humility. So not holding one culture above other cultures because of what we're seeing right now. So in our work, as Nahid said, there's lots of misconceptions around what life is in Canada will be like. Not because people are misinformed, but also because we saw media, we consume television, we consume news, also public images that Canada presents, and from the UN workers and like the conversations that people are having for resettled folks, there is this image that Canada is safe. So people come here, there's also a lot of misconceptions of people who live in Canada. That would bring up, for example, conversations about, oh, you're so lucky to be here, or like, you're safe, you're here and you're safe right now, that we can't ever promise safety. Especially, again, as Nahid said, like people who are visibly queer, visibly trans, they might receive quite a lot of violence, not just from people of color or their national communities, but also from mainstream people who were born here and raised here, regardless of their race and gender. So it's also important for us to know how we're going to navigate dynamics between culture and attributing injustice or patriarchy or oppression to specific cultures. So like, I'm Iranian, so I can use this as like, oh, like all Iranians are sexist, or like all Iranians are this, or all Muslims are this. And it's not about blaming some culture. So part of the how to remedy those like unique and experiences and barriers that people face is also getting educated on cultural safety and humility. Professional personal self-examination and self-reflection, that's an ongoing process that it's important for us to engage in this work. This kind of work, especially again, coming from a mental health practitioner, we can't really separate personal from professional. What we believe in our personal lives does come across in our professional life. No matter how much we try, we can become aware of it. With practice, we are able to name it. So our personal biases, we all have blind spots, and we all have grown wherever that we were born probably in societies that injustice and oppression existed. So it's important to self-reflect and around the approach that we are also taking with LGBTQI plus refugees. So are we taking a savior approach? Are we thinking that people are safe and we need to help them? Are we coming from this person? I don't remember if Dave or Nahid said that this person came from like a community of people who they have built a community in wherever else that they were living before, either in home countries or in a third country. And they were separated for a price to be here. So we also we need to recognize the power of people and do constant self-examination of what is coming up for me when I'm supporting or when I'm sitting across a person. Connections and partnerships. So it's also very important for us to build relationships locally. For the purpose of first, like that would be advocacy. As Nahid said, it's important when we're having those connections and relationships, then we can advocate. And because there is a familiarity, those relationships do matter. And also for conversation. So maybe if I'm building a partnership with a Center for Disability in Vancouver, then we can have crossovers around our staff getting more educated and competent in supporting people with visible and invisible disabilities, and their staff also getting more educated and comfortable supporting people from diverse backgrounds regarding gender, race, immigration status, and such. Because sometimes we become bubbles and silos in the way that we do and the way that social services are designed. And because of that, it will be harder for people to get access to services across. So if I send someone to, I'm just giving disability support as an example, and their staff might not have a lot of exposure or have a working relationship working with people who were not born in Canada or have diverse immigration statuses or gender identities, that interaction might not go well. So it's important for us to have those relationships so that we can just call the person and say, hey, I'm seeing this person, do you have any tips for me? Or what are some of the things that I can offer? Because remember those administrative privileges, not everyone qualifies for everything. So for example, in BC, I think until you are a protected person or a conventional refugees, you cannot apply for disability benefits. And that's important. And maybe a person like a staff who doesn't work with refugees, they might not know that. We face this quite a lot in healthcare when we are working with refugee health insurance, IFHP. And medical staff, sometimes they don't know, so they tell, oh, that, yeah, like you can go to any doctor and there's no charge, doctors are free if you have insurance. And the person hears insurance and they're like, yeah, I know I have insurance. So they go, they get charged, there's nothing we can do about it. So the more relationships and partnerships we build, the better it will be. And scanning serving populations, we, for the most part, we are all aware of who we are supporting. We see people, we hear them, we get feedback, we gather information and demographics. And also, it's also very important to know who is not accessing our services. Who are the people who are not coming, who are absent from the table? And thinking really about that intersectionality and beyond, of who are the people who are not coming to our organizations and why. So asking those questions, so not only paying attention to who is, but also who is not coming and accessing services. That also gives us information about maybe we have a reputation that this center is very good for these people. Like, I don't know, I'm just giving an example that like Rainbow Refugee have this person who speaks Farsi. So like they're very good with people from the Middle East and you can go there. So maybe it alienates another person. Just an example of how those could be created without you even knowing. Or that the services are not accessible from like physical location to like the distance from other communities and such. So just paying attention to that is also important to remedy those unique challenges that we talked about. Next slide. Oh, great, done. I was not expecting that.
You were expecting more, Nazanin.
I was expecting more. That's fantastic. So if you have any questions, thank you. If you have any questions, Adam, how do you want to do that? Do you want to for people to put
yeah,
in the
let's
chat or just...
open the floor to questions. You can use either the Q&A or the chat. And for our three speakers, not just Nazanin. And thank you, Nazanin. Always glad to listen to you and share yours and hear from your experience. Do we have questions?
Comments, questions, observations.
And I think you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and stuff as well. Have this option. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, go ahead then. Sil, do you want to speak? You raise your hand.
You're muted if you're talking. We can't hear you.
No?
You can also type.
Okay.
I'd love to hear your comments, observations, questions.
Popo, go ahead.
Hi, morning everyone. Thank you so much for the fruitful sharing. It's really inspiring, especially today the host is come from Toronto, like Calgary and Vancouver, right? So actually I know every organizations are doing their best to support the community. Is there any way or you want to advocate with the collective, power if you get a chance to talk, I don't know, municipal or federal or parliamentary council? Is there any mission right now that different organizations are working towards a goal? Thank you.
Adam, do you want to answer that? Or do you want me to answer that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
So since Canada is a very big country, right? Today the hosts are come from like Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver. I mean, every provinces has their own characteristic or regulations, right? But when and every organizations are working their best to support the communities. If there is any universal goal that different organizations are working towards, if, for example, you get a chance to talk with maybe city council or the federal level, so that you can make the changes and the impact more powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for asking this. Of course, the Rainbow Coalition for Refuge is like a coalition of organizations that champion LGBTQI refugee protection, and we work collectively to to listen to the people on the ground who are doing the direct work. And we develop together our advocacy priorities each year, and we present them to IRCC. And then we follow up with IRCC on our advocacy goals. And we presented our advocacy goals last month, actually. And let me share them in the chat as well. Meanwhile, we can hear also. Bobo, do you have other questions?
No, I mean, it's good because I know like communicating or dealing with IRCC is a big and challenging task. Thank you. I think you answered my, like, let me know more about the Rainbow Coalition goal. Thank you.
Yeah.
There are 2 questions in the chat box as well. If anyone wants to cover them, especially Denzel's question.
So what is GSL for people who don't speak English? Do we know what's?
I don't know what GSL is. Is it guidelines? Is that what you mean? But I can answer the second question a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like, at least in BC, I think nationally we are going through a bit of a healthcare crisis with the providers, and connecting people has been quite difficult. What we have been doing is we're doing partnerships. So I've been working on this for the past 3 years. It started with access to gender affirming care for people on IFHP, which is it's a very convoluted process. In BC, we have we have 2 health authorities that I think other provinces don't have. One is the First Nations Health Authority. So in addition to the local health authorities that we also have a provincial health authority called First Nations Health Authority that for people who are status Indigenous people administers healthcare and mental health care, and also Transcare BC that administers and coordinates gender affirming care across the province. I have built a partnership over years with them, and it started with gender affirming care, but now it became around medical care. Because of the shortage, we have built relationships with local community health centers and also urgent and primary care centers. UPCCs, or urgent primary care centers, are a new concept in BC. I don't know if other provinces have them. They're funded, I think, directly by health authorities. And they kind of replace emergency rooms. So they don't have a lot of equipment, but they have staffing from, I think, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we have built relationships with them in terms of both becoming more equipped and competent in responding and working with refugees, especially, again, navigating IFHP and refugee health, and letting them know that, kind of reminding them that, for example, language access is quite difficult, that providing interpretation is kind of the responsibility. We don't still know if it's the legal right or not, but it's a responsibility. And also we have let them know that if they could not, they could reach out to me directly. And I will actually like individually coordinate interpreters to go in with people to their appointments. Just because, again, like those intersections that I talked about, it puts people at such a disempowered place that they just give up. And because we don't do that, like we have done those relationships and advocacies, we're going to meet with the urgent and primary care coordinator in the Vancouver region. I think next week I have a meeting with them to also talk about this. So building those connections and relationships, even though on paper they might, or on their website, they might say that they are not accepting new clients or new patients. Sometimes those relationships and conversations, if there's a wait list that open up, sometimes they let me know earlier, or if there's like a room for someone, or sometimes they even make exceptions for us. So when the system on a systemic level isn't accessible, we go into what Queer Community has always done, which is like through networks and connections and relationships. And it's a band-aid solution, but it's like something that has been working for now in the healthcare shortage that we're witnessing in BC.
Right. I would just like to add to the conversation and to underscore what you've just said about the need to build relationship and really work in concert with the different players, just to make sure that our members are fully supported. What we do at MCC Toronto from the perspective of working with the resettled refugees is that we really rely on the expertise and guidance of our teams to really connect the individual refugee who they are supporting to appropriate services, which include finding a family doctor who speaks the language of the person to be supported. But also one of the resources that I can quickly tell you of that I've been able to point individuals to is the Rainbow Health Ontario. That's an organization. If you go on their website, you will see a list of family doctors who are LGBTQ plus competent. Of course, we have to respect the right, and the choices of the refugee. So at all times, we do encourage that they be a part of the process in terms of making that selection for their family doctor and so on. And then finally, what I'd like to say, RSTP has been doing a good job in terms of supporting our work. In fact, we have a scheduled training session with them, which is going to be tomorrow. And they should be presenting on a project that they're currently working on, which basically try to identify certain unique settlement agencies, including family doctors and other support services to members of the community. So very shortly, you will see something out. Of course, I'm not speaking on their behalf, but just sort of flagging that as something that is coming on stream.
I'd like to add to that in terms of what we have in Calgary as well. We feel the same shortage of proper medical help for specifically for the LGBTQ plus community, but we do have organizations like Center for Sexuality, which helps folks with HIV positive or all other medical needs, but they could have long wait lists. So Mosaic Refugee Clinic is another one that not always, but they tend to have one or two practitioners or GPs who belong to the community or have served LGBTQ community in the past. And in terms of for the language barrier part in Calgary, we all medical clinics have access to phone interpretation. Of course, it's not the ideal, but it is something that they offer. If the doctor doesn't speak their languages, they can use the phone interpretation. And in terms of building partnership, there are clinics that they belong to the LGBTQ community themselves, the main doctor, and they in the past they worked with us. But again, the numbers are not that big. I only know 3 GPs who are specifically, belonging to the community is something, but also being experienced and being able to serve the community is also another thing. So in Calgary, almost now 2 million, there are 3 GPs that I send my clients to, but there is a big waiting list that it's unfortunate. But it exists, so hopefully we will have more and more in the future.
Thank you, Nahid.
Also, Denzel, I'm not sure which city you are at, but in terms of your questions on speaking English and practice, and depending on your status in Canada, there are different classes available. There are ESL, Link, and as I mentioned, for example, as our organization, we also have mentorship. We connect the clients with volunteers who can hold conversation clubs, and they can practice English with the client one-on-one. And the same thing with your second question about finding a job. At the center, we have career development program, CDGS, that they help you with writing a resume, connecting you to employers, having workshops on interview skills. And there are so many available agencies. And I know different cities and provinces like BC and Ontario, they also have great English classes, and they have job search agencies and employment services. So depending on where you are at, you should contact the immigrant serving agency closest to you and see if they offer that to you.
In Calgary. So Nahid, can you send the best email for Denzel to contact?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. I'm giving my email. Denzel, please send an email to myself, and I will connect you with one of my team members.
Adam, I also just want to say for the folks here in Toronto, we do have some very specific organizations that we are working with, and we sort of streamline individuals as they come. So firstly, at MCC, we have, through the support of one of our volunteers, we do provide support around employment, resume building, finding jobs and all of that. And then there is a process of trying to, once that internal work is done, they are outsourced to an organization we have a very close working relationship with called Achieve. Through one of their members, Lisa Trudell. She self-identifies as a member of the community and has been very, very instrumental in terms of helping to support not only our resettled refugees, but also persons who are going through a peer support program. There is Achieve. We are also connected to them from time to time. They do also have employment opportunities wherein they will invite other organizations to come and share about specific hiring opportunities that are there. And then there is finally a Tent Partnership for those persons who may not know what Tent Partnership is about. Tent Partnership, the intention behind it is really to connect newcomers. There is a specific program connecting refugees and LGBTQ+ refugees to corporate organizations to really get them to mentor them. And the hope of that mentorship is for them to build relationship, network, and possibly, find jobs along the way. So we do have, a few individuals who we work with and organizations. So if there's anyone who needs direct contact or support, please feel free to reach out directly to me, and I'll just drop my email in the chat as well.
Perfect. Thank you. With that, we reach to the end of this webinar and for our time together today. Thank you, Nazanin, Nahid, Dave, for all the knowledge you brought and resources you shared. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time to attend this webinar. I hope this has been a good use of your time, and we'll see you in our next webinar. I'll be communicating the topic and the time. Take care. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you. Bye, everyone.